One day in 2004, Michael Jackson turned on the television and was deeply shaken by what he saw. Eminem, in his "Just Lose It" music video, was mocking scenes of Jackson's nose falling off, his hair catching fire, and jumping on a bed with young children. The king of pop immediately grabbed his phone. "Take this off the air," he told MTV executives. Now. This moment marked the beginning of music history's most unexpected and brutal duel. On one side, the undisputed legend of pop music, on the other, the new king of the rap world. If these kinds of stories catch your attention, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Where are you watching us from right now? Let us know in the comments below. In October 2004, the music world witnessed the beginning of one of the most unexpected feuds in pop culture history. Michael Jackson, the once untouchable king of pop now struggling to maintain his legacy amid personal scandals, found himself targeted by Eminem, the reigning bad boy of rap who had built his career on controversy and confrontation. The timing couldn't have been more precarious for Jackson. At 46, he was facing the most serious crisis of his career, a high-profile criminal trial on child molestation charges that threatened not just his freedom but the entire legacy he had built since childhood. The allegations had sent Jackson into a spiral of legal troubles, financial strain, and public ridicule. His once unassailable position as pop music's greatest icon had been severely compromised, with radio stations dropping his music and former allies distancing themselves as the trial loomed. Eminem, meanwhile, was experiencing the apex of his commercial and cultural power. At 32, the Detroit rapper had evolved from underground sensation to global superstar, with his previous album, The Eminem Show, selling over 27 million copies worldwide. His semi-autobiographical film, 8 Mile, had earned both critical acclaim and commercial success, even landing Eminem an Academy Award for Best Original Song with Lose Yourself. His provocative lyrics, technical skill, and boundary-pushing persona had made him not just a successful musician but a cultural force who had transformed the landscape of popular music. The catalyst for their conflict was Eminem's "Just Lose It," the lead single from his album Encore. The song itself contained only a few mild jabs at Jackson, but the accompanying music video took the provocation to another level. Eminem appeared in Jackson-like makeup and costume, portraying him in a series of unflattering and mocking scenes. Most controversially, the video referenced Jackson's 1993 child molestation allegations and his infamous 2002 incident where he dangled his infant son over a hotel balcony. It also recreated the 1984 Pepsi commercial accident where Jackson's hair caught fire, playing it for laughs with Eminem's character losing his nose in the flames, a cruel reference to Jackson's much-scrutinized facial appearances. The video, directed by Paul Hunter, didn't limit its provocations to Jackson. It also featured Eminem dressed as Madonna and MC Hammer, but the Jackson segments were the most extensive and cutting. In one particularly controversial scene, Eminem as Jackson is shown on a bed surrounded by children, his face collapsing in a grotesque parody of plastic surgery gone wrong. For Jackson, who had just endured a highly public trial on child molestation charges, from which he would ultimately be acquitted in 2005, the video was not just tasteless comedy but a deeply personal attack at his most vulnerable moment. Within hours of the video's premiere on MTV, Jackson was on the phone with network executives demanding its removal. "Michael was livid," recalled a former member of Jackson's management team who requested anonymity. "I'd rarely seen him that angry. He felt it crossed every line of decency and professional respect." It wasn't just the mockery of his appearance, which he'd grown somewhat accustomed to, but the child molestation references that came at a time when he was fighting for his very freedom and reputation. According to this source, Jackson viewed the video not just as an insult but as potentially damaging to his legal defense. With jury selection for his trial approaching, any content that reinforced negative perceptions of him in the public consciousness could indirectly influence the pool of potential jurors. This wasn't just about hurt feelings, it was about survival. Jackson's outrage was compounded by the fact that the video was being aired on MTV, a network whose early success had been significantly boosted by Jackson's groundbreaking videos for Billie Jean, Beat It, and Thriller in the 1980s. Jackson had been instrumental in breaking the color barrier at MTV, which had initially resisted playing videos by black artists until the overwhelming popularity of Billie Jean forced their hand in 1983. For Jackson, MTV's willingness to air content mocking him felt like a particularly personal betrayal. Jackson didn't stop at private calls. He took his objections public, releasing a statement that condemned not just Eminem but the music industry's willingness to profit from his personal pain. "I am very angry at Eminem's depiction of me in his video," the statement read. "It is one thing to spoof, but it is another to be demeaning and insensitive. I've never met Mr. Eminem, and to have Eminem do that is wrong and distasteful. Eminem has lost all credibility in my eyes." The statement was uncharacteristically direct for Jackson, who typically avoided public conflicts with other artists. Its forceful tone reflected both the depth of his anger and the high stakes of the situation as he prepared for his trial. Jackson then took an unprecedented step, appearing on Steve Harvey's radio show to personally express his disappointment and call for action. "I've admired Eminem as an artist, and was shocked by this," Jackson said on air. "The video is inappropriate and disrespectful to me, my children, my family and the community at large." In the interview, Jackson went further, suggesting that the video crossed a line from artistic expression into harmful stereotyping. "It's demeaning and disrespectful. And I also want to make it clear that it's not just about Michael Jackson but about a pattern of disrespect that he's shown to our community. He needs to stop it, and he needs to stop it now." The controversy quickly escalated beyond the two artists. BET, Black Entertainment Television, announced it would not air the video, with founder Robert Johnson stating, "BET is pulling the video because we feel it is inappropriate to use our network to air a video disparaging Michael Jackson's character." Other artists began taking sides. Stevie Wonder publicly criticized the video as "kicking a man while he's down." Jackson's brother Jermaine went further, suggesting that Eminem was motivated by racism. "He needs to pick on somebody his size. We all know he doesn't want to play with the big boys." Steve Harvey, who had hosted Jackson's radio interview, became one of his most vocal defenders, suggesting that the black community should unite behind Jackson. "Eminem has been taking shots at everybody black. We need to make a stand now. What Eminem is doing is disrespectful. Let's see if he's disrespectful to his own kind." These comments highlighted how quickly the conflict had evolved from a dispute between two artists into a broader conversation about race, respect, and power dynamics in the music industry. Many black artists and executives viewed Eminem's mockery of Jackson as part of a troubling pattern of disrespect toward black cultural figures, made more complicated by Eminem's position as a white artist who had achieved unprecedented success in a predominantly black musical genre. Eminem's response to the controversy was characteristically defiant. Through his publicist, he issued a terse statement: "Eminem respects Michael Jackson, but the video is Eminem's vision of what makes him laugh. It's a shame some people don't have a sense of humor like he does." This dismissive response reflected Eminem's long-standing persona as an provocateur who refused to bow to criticism or apologize for his art. Throughout his career, he had targeted numerous celebrities in his lyrics and videos, including Christina Aguilera, Moby, Fred Durst, and Ja Rule. His identity as an artist was deeply intertwined with his willingness to say the unsayable and mock the untouchable. Paul Rosenberg, Eminem's manager, elaborated slightly in subsequent interviews, suggesting that the video was being misinterpreted. "The video is not making fun of Michael Jackson's past, it's just a comedic characterization. And if you actually watch the video, Eminem clearly respects Michael. Eminem dresses up as a lot of celebrities in the video, so Michael isn't being singled out." Behind this public posturing, the conflict touched on deeper issues within the music industry: the changing guard between pop and hip-hop, racial dynamics, and the ethics of parody in an increasingly boundary-pushing entertainment landscape. "This wasn't just about two big egos," explained music journalist Nelson George, who covered the feud at the time. "It represented a cultural shift. Eminem was part of a hip-hop generation that was displacing pop stars like Jackson from the center of popular culture. There was an element of the new king taking shots at the old king to establish dominance. It's an age-old story in entertainment, but with modern twists. The conflict also reflected the very different positions Jackson and Eminem occupied in their respective career arcs. Jackson was fighting to preserve a legacy built over 4 decades, while Eminem was still in the ascendant phase of his career, building his brand partly through provocation and boundary pushing. For Jackson, this was about dignity and survival at a vulnerable moment, George continued. For Eminem, it was just another controversy that fed into his image as the unfiltered truth-teller. The power imbalance made the conflict particularly painful to watch. For Jackson, Eminem's Mockery came at a particularly vulnerable moment. His 2001 album, Invincible, had underperformed by his historic standards. His physical appearance had become a constant source of public ridicule. And most devastatingly, he was facing his second set of child molestation allegations, with a trial looming that could send him to prison. His outrage at the video was not just about professional disrespect but personal survival. The pressures on Jackson at this time were immense. According to those close to him, he was struggling with dependence on prescription medications, financial strain from his lavish lifestyle and declining revenue, and profound anxiety about his upcoming trial. The Eminem video felt like yet another attack in what Jackson increasingly perceived as a coordinated effort to destroy him. Michael was genuinely bewildered by how quickly the world had turned against him, said one former associate who remained close to Jackson during this period. He kept asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" He couldn't understand how he had gone from being universally adored to being a punchline and a pariah. Eminem, meanwhile, was at his commercial and cultural peak. His previous albums had broken sales records and crossed demographic barriers previously thought impenetrable for white rappers. 8 Mile, the semi-autobiographical film about his rise from Detroit's impoverished neighborhoods, had earned both critical acclaim and box office success. He had built his empire partly through provocative lyrics and videos that often targeted celebrities, from Christina Aguilera to Moby to Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. Jackson was simply the latest and perhaps most significant target in a long line of public figures caught in Eminem's lyrical crosshairs. Yet for all his success, Eminem was navigating his own challenges. He was battling addiction to prescription painkillers, dealing with the pressures of fame that he had never anticipated, and trying to maintain his edge as he moved from hungry outsider to established superstar. His provocations, while presented as fearless truth-telling, were also a successful formula he felt pressure to maintain even as he matured as an artist and person. M was going through his own stuff, revealed one studio engineer who worked with Eminem during this period. The prescription drug issues were getting worse, and there was a recklessness to him that wasn't there before. The Jackson video was partly that recklessness coming out. There wasn't a lot of thought about consequences at that time. As the controversy raged in the media, behind the scenes, the conflict took on additional dimensions. Jackson's team moved beyond public statements to more concrete action. According to industry insiders, Jackson's representatives reached out to several record executives, including some at Interscope, Eminem's label, expressing their profound disappointment and suggesting potential consequences if the video continued to air. It was never explicitly stated, but the implication was clear, said one former record executive familiar with these conversations. Michael still had enormous influence in the industry. If he decided to use that influence to make things difficult for people he felt had disrespected him, he could. There were unspoken threats about pulled collaborations, denied samples, and other industry punishments. The Jackson team also began reaching out to allies in the black entertainment community, seeking to build a coalition that would pressure MTV and other outlets to stop airing the video. They contacted prominent figures like Russell Simmons, Jay-Z, and Oprah Winfrey, arguing that Eminem's mockery of Jackson had racist undertones that demanded a unified response from black cultural leaders. Michael genuinely believed this was bigger than just him, said one former Jackson aide. He saw it as part of a pattern of disrespect toward successful black men in entertainment. He expected the black community would rally behind him on principle. These behind-the-scenes maneuvers created tensions within Interscope itself, which had business relationships with both artists. Jimmy Iovine, the label's co-founder who had helped launch Eminem's career, found himself in an uncomfortable position, needing to support his current star while not alienating a music legend with whom he had worked on multiple projects. According to sources within Interscope at the time, Iovine privately acknowledged that the video had gone too far but publicly stood by Eminem's creative choices. Jimmy was walking a tightrope, said one former Interscope executive. He knew the video was problematic, but Eminem was the label's biggest asset. The strategy became minimizing the conflict without forcing M to back down, which he wouldn't have done anyway. The conflict also created awkward dynamics at MTV, which had built much of its early success on Jackson's groundbreaking videos in the 1980s but now counted Eminem among its biggest contemporary stars. The network initially continued airing the video but reduced its frequency in rotation, a compromise that satisfied neither camp. MTV was trying to play both sides, said a former MTV executive who was involved in the decision-making. They couldn't pull the video completely without alienating Eminem and his fans, but they also couldn't ignore the legitimate concerns raised by Jackson and others. The reduced rotation was a corporate non-solution that just made everyone unhappy. While the public narrative focused on the direct conflict between Jackson and Eminem, there was another key player in the drama, Dr. Dre. As Eminem's mentor, producer, and business partner, Dre wielded significant influence over Eminem's career decisions. According to several sources, Dre was uncomfortable with the extent of the Jackson mockery in the video. Dre respected Michael's musical legacy immensely, revealed one studio engineer who worked with both Dre and Eminem during this period. He thought the jokes about the molestation allegations went too far. There were actually some even more offensive scenes that were cut from the final video at Dre's insistence. This behind-the-scenes disagreement reflected broader divisions within hip-hop regarding respect for musical predecessors versus the culture's emphasis on boundary pushing and provocation. Many older hip-hop artists who had grown up on Jackson's music felt Eminem's video crossed a line, while younger artists tended to defend it as within the bounds of artistic expression. The controversy also exposed generational divides in how Jackson was perceived. For older music fans who had witnessed Jackson's transformation from child prodigy to global megastar, he remained a towering figure deserving of respect despite his personal troubles. For younger audiences who knew him primarily through tabloid controversies and changing appearance, he had already become something of a punchline before Eminem's video. There was a real split in how people responded based on age, noted cultural critic Teray. If you came of age during Thriller and experienced firsthand how Jackson changed music, you tended to see the video as disrespectful. If your primary association with Jackson was the more recent scandals and eccentricities, you were more likely to see it as fair game for satire. The controversy hit its peak when Jackson attempted to organize a more coordinated response among black entertainers. According to several sources, Jackson made calls to prominent figures including Oprah Winfrey, Russell Simmons, and Jay-Z, seeking to build consensus that Eminem's video was not just an attack on him personally but had racist undertones that demanded a united front. The results of these efforts were mixed. While some artists publicly supported Jackson, others privately expressed fatigue with his personal dramas or were reluctant to engage in a fight with Eminem, whose cultural capital was at an all-time high. The hope for a united front never fully materialized, revealing the complex racial and generational politics at play. Michael was genuinely shocked that more black artists didn't rally around him, said one former Jackson associate. He saw Eminem's portrayal as playing into harmful stereotypes about black men and children. But what he didn't fully grasp was how his own isolation from the black community over the years had eroded some of the natural solidarity he expected. This dynamic was complicated by Jackson's own complex relationship with racial identity. Throughout his career, Jackson had navigated the challenges of being a black artist in a predominantly white industry, breaking barriers while also transcending racial categories in ways that sometimes created distance between him and other black entertainers. His changing appearance, which he attributed to the skin condition vitiligo but which many perceived as an attempt to appear less black, had created lingering questions about his relationship with his own racial identity. Michael had a complicated history with the black entertainment community, explained one music industry veteran who knew both Jackson and Eminem. He had been groundbreaking in terms of what a black artist could achieve commercially, but his deliberate positioning as a universal, post-racial figure meant that some black artists didn't feel the same kinship with him that they might have otherwise. When he suddenly wanted solidarity based on racial lines, it wasn't as automatic as he expected. Despite these complications, Jackson did receive support from several prominent black entertainers. Steve Harvey remained his most vocal defender, using his popular radio show to criticize Eminem and question why a white artist felt entitled to mock a black icon with impunity. Stevie Wonder spoke out forcefully, suggesting the video would have never been approved if it mocked a white star of Jackson's stature. And Jackson's family, particularly his brother Jermaine, made the racial dynamics explicit in their public statements. Eminem doesn't have a pass on this, Jermaine Jackson said in one interview. Being accepted in hip-hop doesn't mean you can disrespect one of our legends like that. There's a double standard here that everyone can see. As the weeks passed, the immediate controversy began to fade, as it inevitably does in the fast-moving world of entertainment news. But the impact of the feud continued to reverberate through both artists' careers in surprising ways. For Jackson, the Eminem controversy reinforced his growing sense that the entertainment industry had turned against him. Already feeling betrayed by music industry executives he had enriched over decades, the perceived disrespect from a fellow artist, and the tepid defense from many of his peers, deepened his disillusionment. According to those close to him, this incident contributed to his retreat from public life and his eventual decision to plan what would become his "This Is It" comeback tour, an attempt to reclaim his legacy on his own terms. The Eminem thing was one of many straws breaking the camel's back, said a longtime Jackson confidant. Michael felt the industry he had helped build was now exploiting his pain for profit. It confirmed his suspicion that he needed to step away from America entirely for a while. Following his acquittal in June 2005, Jackson left the United States for Bahrain, beginning a 3-year self-imposed exile from the country where he had achieved unparalleled success but now felt unwelcome and persecuted. During this period, he spoke occasionally about the hurt caused by public mockery, without specifically mentioning Eminem but making clear how deeply he had been affected by the culture of ridicule that had grown around him. For Eminem, the backlash to the "Just Lose It" video represented one of the first moments when his provocations generated more criticism than praise. While previous controversies had helped build his outlaw image, the Jackson mockery, particularly the references to child molestation allegations, struck many as punching down rather than speaking truth to power. The single underperformed compared to his previous lead releases, and some critics suggested he had finally gone too far. It marked a turning point for Eminem, observed music critic Teray. Before "Just Lose It," his provocations were generally seen as audacious and refreshing. After it, there was more scrutiny about whether his shock tactics were becoming predictable or mean-spirited. It didn't destroy his career by any means, but it did change how some people viewed his approach to controversy. The album Encore, which featured "Just Lose It," received more mixed reviews than Eminem's previous work, with many critics noting that his once innovative shock tactics were beginning to feel formulaic. While still commercially successful, selling over 5 million copies in the United States, it represented a downturn from the spectacular performance of his earlier albums. In the years following the controversy, Eminem entered a troubled period in both his personal and professional life. His addiction to prescription painkillers worsened, his childhood friend and D12 colleague Proof was murdered in 2006, and his 2006 album Relapse was met with mixed reviews despite commercial success. While it would be an overstatement to attribute these challenges directly to the Jackson controversy, the video had marked the beginning of a more difficult phase in his career. The aftermath of the feud took an unexpected turn in 2008 when reports emerged that Jackson had purchased the publishing rights to the entire Eminem song catalog. Though these reports were exaggerated, Jackson's company, Sony/ATV, had acquired Famous Music LLC, which owned portions of Eminem's catalog, but not complete control. the narrative of Jackson having the last laugh by literally owning Eminem's music was too delicious for the media to resist. The reality was more nuanced but still ironic. While Jackson didn't personally own Eminem's songs, his business acumen had put him in partial control of his former antagonist's musical legacy. It was a reminder that for all his personal eccentricities, Jackson was a shrewd businessman who understood the long-term value of musical assets better than many of his contemporaries. This business connection created an unexpected link between the two artists that outlived Jackson himself. Following Jackson's death in 2009, the Sony/ATV catalog, including its interest in Eminem's music, remained part of Jackson's estate until it was sold to Sony for $750 million in 2016. For 7 years after his death, Jackson's estate had a financial stake in Eminem's published music, a bizarrely intimate business entanglement between two artists who had once been at odds. In a final twist that few could have predicted, Eminem's attitude toward Jackson evolved significantly after the pop star's death in 2009. In a complete reversal from his earlier Mockery, Eminem spoke respectfully about Jackson's influence and legacy in several interviews. In his 2018 album, Kamikaze, Eminem even expressed regret for the feud, rapping, "And I was wrong, I took my shots and I got stung / but I gave everything for my son, I'm his #1 fan." According to those close to Eminem, this change of heart was genuine. M gained perspective as he got older, said one longtime associate. He realized that some of his provocations had real consequences for real people. Michael was an easy target because of all the rumors and his eccentric persona, but after Michael died, I think M recognized that beneath all that was a human being who suffered a lot of pain, something M could actually relate to. This evolution reflected broader changes in Eminem's approach to his art as he matured. Where his early career had been defined by gleeful provocation and boundary pushing, his later work increasingly grappled with regrets, amends, and reflections on the consequences of fame, themes that Jackson himself had explored throughout his career. In a 2013 interview with Rolling Stone, Eminem spoke about his battle with prescription drug addiction and how it had given him a new perspective on his earlier behavior. "When I first became sober, I felt like I was a walking cliché. When you realize, I don't necessarily know if I was right about everything, it's a very humbling experience." While he didn't specifically mention the Jackson controversy in this interview, the sentiment reflected a broader reassessment of his provocative past through the lens of his own personal struggles and growth. The parallels to Jackson's own battles with addiction and public perception were striking, suggesting that despite their conflict, the two artists had more in common than either might have recognized at the time. The Jackson-Eminem feud, which began with mockery and outrage, ultimately revealed unexpected parallels between two seemingly opposite artists. Both had experienced childhood trauma that shaped their adult personalities. Both had struggled with the isolating effects of unprecedented fame. Both had complex relationships with racial identity and the music industry's power structures. And both had created artistic personas that sometimes obscured the vulnerable humans beneath. In the end, they were more alike than different, reflected producer Jimmy Jam, who worked with Jackson on several projects. Two incredibly talented artists who revolutionized their genres, who were haunted by their pasts, who never quite felt understood by the public. The tragedy is that they never found that common ground while Michael was alive. Both artists had also used their music as a form of therapy and self-expression, channeling personal pain into creative output that resonated with millions. Jackson's songs like Childhood and Scream dealt directly with his feelings of persecution and misunderstanding, while Eminem's entire catalog was built around exorcising personal demons through lyrical catharsis. The conflict between Jackson and Eminem encapsulated broader tensions that continue to resonate in popular culture: the boundaries of artistic expression versus respect, the generational transitions in musical influence, the complex racial dynamics in American entertainment, and the human toll of celebrity culture's tendency to build up icons only to tear them down. It also demonstrated how conflicts between artists are rarely just about the individuals involved but reflect larger cultural currents and industry power struggles. What appeared on the surface to be a simple case of one artist mocking another revealed itself, upon closer examination, to be a multi-layered clash of generations, genres, business interests, and artistic philosophies. The Jackson-Eminem feud was really about the changing of the guard in popular music, observed Chuck D of Public Enemy, who has commented thoughtfully on the evolution of black music. It was hip-hop asserting its dominance over pop, it was the new school refusing to bow to the old school, it was about race and appropriation and respect. The personal drama between two artists was just the visible tip of much deeper currents. Today, as time provides greater perspective on both artists' legacies, the 2004 feud appears less as a defining moment for either man and more as a notable chapter in the complex, ongoing conversation about art, offense, legacy, and the price of provocative self-expression in American popular culture. For Michael Jackson, the "Just Lose It" controversy represents one of the many battles he fought in his later years to protect his dignity and legacy against a tide of ridicule and scrutiny. For Eminem, it marks a moment when his characteristic provocation encountered meaningful resistance, forcing a reconsideration of the line between audacious art and gratuitous cruelty. And for the rest of us, their conflict serves as a reminder that behind the larger-than-life personas of our most iconic entertainers are human beings affected by criticism, capable of anger and hurt, and sometimes able to grow and evolve in their understanding of themselves and others, even if that understanding comes too late for reconciliation. In the years since Jackson's death, his musical legacy has undergone a reassessment, with increasing focus on his groundbreaking artistry rather than the controversies of his later life. Similarly, Eminem has evolved from enfant terrible to respected veteran, his provocative past now viewed through the lens of an artist who pushed boundaries to create space for greater authenticity in popular music. Perhaps the final irony of their conflict is that both men ultimately sought the same thing: respect for their art and understanding of the humans behind the headlines. Their feud, which once seemed to represent an unbridgeable divide between different musical worlds, now appears as a moment when two artists at different points in their journeys crossed paths, one fighting to preserve a legacy, the other still defining his, each unable to recognize in the other a reflection of their own struggles with fame, creativity, and the heavy price of living life as an icon rather than simply as a human being.